Welcome to Disruptive Successor, a show for next generation leaders in family businesses and entrepreneurs who want to disrupt the status quo and take their existing business to a whole new level. We all know that what got us here isn't going to get us there. This show will provide inspiration, advice, and resources to help you create massive impact. This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Hi, it's Jonathan Goldhill, and welcome back to another episode of the Disruptive Successor Show. My guest today is Zach Carlin. Zach has had an unconventional path to success. He was a professional athlete in 3 different sports, and injury took him out of each at various points. From there, he started his entrepreneurial journey by flipping and selling gyms. Today, he runs his own business consulting firm, specializing in scaling small to medium-sized businesses. Zach has provided executive leadership coaching for companies like HP, Salesforce, and Tamco, helping leaders navigate complex challenges. He is also the VP of development for a window manufacturing company. Zach, you've had quite a background in a lot of different areas. And so welcome to the show. If you wouldn't mind by starting to tell us about your journey to becoming a professional athlete. You're the first on this show to have that background.
Well, that is an honor, and thank you very much for having me. This is a big pleasure, big pleasure. So I was a professional fighter. I turned pro when I was 18, just at the tail end of being 18. Small town, Canada is where I'm from. There wasn't much else to do, and if you weren't doing sports, you were doing not so great things. So I chose the sports,
right?
For the most part. And then I was in martial arts from an early age. I was a black belt in karate by the time I was 8, boxing, and by the time I was 12. It was just kind of what you do to stay out of trouble. There's only 900 people in my town. The closest city was about an hour and a half away. So it was just, we wanted to keep busy because, again, the alternatives were drugs and alcohol and that kind of stuff. So by the time I was 18, I had my first professional mixed martial arts fight. Got into a little bit of trouble when I was 17, 18 years old, and that's kind of what got me out of it. And then when I turned 19, kind of the tail end of being 19, I decided to make the move from a small town, Claresholm, Alberta, Canada, to Las Vegas. So that's when that was kind of when the lights were on, and that's when I really okay, I'm a professional athlete now. So, and I fought professionally until 2013. There we go.
Right.
2013. And then while I was doing that, I was also running my own, solopreneur, trying to make some money on the side, just as a personal trainer, working with some people to try to get some money. So that was kind of my first foray into as a professional athlete and running a little bit of a business.
Wow. Well, you're definitely probably also from the smallest town of anyone I've ever known. 900 people. That's crazy small. And, it's interesting. I don't think of martial arts as a profession that people make money at. And so back up a little bit and tell us, what's the mindset or what was your mindset as a martial artist? What is the mindset of a martial artist? And because I know it's different from a professional athlete. I live in Los Angeles, where Shohei Ohtani just signed a $700 million contract with the Los Angeles Dodgers, the largest ever, a ridiculous amount. But he's considered to be the Babe Ruth of today. He pitches and he hits. So tell us what's the journey of a martial artist like?
So like I said, in my town where I'm from, it was either sports or drugs, and I had gotten into that. So by the time I was 17, I was actually homeless for just under a year.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's what got me out of it, was focusing back on the art, martial arts, like fighting. Right. So it's kind of all I knew, a little bit. It's kind of all I thought I could be successful in at the time. So the thought process behind it was just, this is what I have to do to survive.
Mm-hmm.
And the first fight I was paid for was it was in a nightclub called the Back Alley. And if everybody listening is picturing it right now, it looks like that.
Sounds like Eminem in the movie 8
Mile. Yeah.
8 Mile. Right.
You're not that far off. And I got paid $450 for that.
Wow.
And I did not win. So I got paid $450 to get beat up as an 18-year-old. So, but it was all like kind of new. Right. So the mindset was, this is what got me out of that bad situation. So this is what I need to keep doing. Right. And then as I met better people, I got around better people, I started to, the mindset, you asked the mindset, it moved from kind of survive, just doing this to keep moving, to appreciating the hard work that it takes to, how does everything kind of work together? Right. If I'm fighting somebody or my next opponent is who's a wrestler. In Canada, we're not known for wrestling. So if I'm fighting a wrestler, then how do I formulate a plan and a strategy? And then how do I execute in my training to overcome these obstacles? Right. I had an outcome that I needed. I had little steps that I needed. I had skills that I had to get better at. And then I needed to put a plan together to achieve the outcome that I wanted, or at least increase the likelihood that I would achieve the outcome that I wanted. So that was really the mindset shift, was appreciating the formula, appreciating the art of it, that everything had to work together to achieve a specific outcome, at least increasing the odds.
And how long were you able to do this sport? Is it a sport?
Yeah.
Okay. How long were you able to do this sport before you either aged out or just, decided to move on? What was?
So it was just under 4 years. So I had 11 fights, just under 4 years, and I dislocated my hip.
Okay.
And that was uncomfortable. So at 23 years old, dislocating your hips, it's not a great start to your development.
Right.
So I was fighting for a promotion called SCC, Superior Cage Combat. They have not been around for 10 plus years now.
Right.
And they were kind of what was keeping me in the country, because again, I'm Canadian moving to the States, and they were what was kind of keeping me in the country. So when I got cut from them, because if you can't fight, you're not worth anything to them. Right. And then I ended up I got kicked out of the country. I like to say that, and sometimes I'll say that and I won't tell people why. And they'll be like, but it was just, we missed some paperwork and I got kicked out of the country. And then that's kind of when my next sport started blossoming. And then I really started getting into running gyms and owning businesses at that point.
Okay. All right. So before we get that, I just wanted to make a sort of a small point or story here, which is, not being from that background, not being where martial arts is a big thing. I can see how it leads to incredible success. I could say that my biggest competitor is a big podcaster. His name is Joe Rogan. He's not my competitor, but he did get a very large podcasting contract from Spotify. And he's a serious martial artist guy. And he's still into it. I think he still fights, if I'm not mistaken. And he's what, 55 years old? 53?
Like 50,
yeah. My daughter actually used to be friends with his daughter and used to hang out at his house. I was like, Joe Rogan from Fear Factor? Seriously? The comedian, the guy? And now he's like the podcast superstar. Anyway, okay. So I digress. All right. So then and it's interesting, 11 fights over 4 years. That's not a lot of fights, it seems, but it's a lot of, that's probably like a professional boxer. If you did 3 fights, 4 fights a year, then you're constantly either preparing for a fight, recovering from a fight. It's interesting. Okay. So then you made the transition to being a gym owner. What, and because I guess you had a side hustle going on all these years since you said you were young. And gyms made sense. Yeah.
It was just kind of what I knew I was good at the time. And so I had, through all this time, again, like you said, you're only fighting 11 times in 4 years. So that's 11 paychecks. It's not a lot, right? No, comparatively to weekly or bi-weekly or monthly.
That's a lumpy income. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to make money in between, because even my highest paycheck was so you would typically you get paid to show
Right.
up, and
Right.
then you'd get a bonus to win. And
Right.
then if it was a good fight or whatever it was, you get another little bonus. And the most I think I ever got was right around the 8,000 mark because
Wow.
I showed and I won. And that again, that was maybe my third fight that year. So to get paid, even if it was $8,000 three times a year, it's not very
Yeah.
much money.
No.
So yeah, I was doing personal training on
Is
the
that
side.
Canadian? Eh?
No, it was no, that was American. So
8,000.
I felt like I was rich. I felt like I was rich.
Okay.
The dollar, unfortunately, the dollar was pretty good at the time, so it didn't translate really well.
Okay.
But I
Sorry.
was doing no, it's okay. So I was doing personal training and strength and conditioning on the side.
Right.
Right. I was just doing my own thing and kind of
Sure.
educating myself on that. And that was YouTube was starting to be a thing at that time now, so I could get you could start to get a lot of information on the
Interesting.
internet at that point. So that's where a lot of my initial education came from on both the physical education part and in the business education part. But again, still wasn't a ton out there, so I was making a lot of mistakes. Still a lot of learning back then was from hard knocks.
Yeah.
So I tried to translate everything that I learned into owning a gym in Canada, and I switched. That's when my second sport kind of came to the forefront, which is CrossFit, and I started competing in CrossFit. And the only reason I even bought into a gym is because I needed a place consistent to train at. Because again, I had to move back to a small town, and this gym was in the city, Calgary, Alberta, which was about an hour and a half drive.
Hmm.
So I bought the gym, so I had a cool place to work out in, and that was it
Wow.
until I got I saw the first profit loss statement. And I was like, I thought the number would be bigger. I thought business owners made a lot of money,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
And then that's when I kind of became almost a hobbyist business owner
Yeah.
because my I was full-time training in CrossFit. And again, I didn't know I could compete in CrossFit. And I was like, oh, I can compete in something and not get hit in the head. Sounds good.
You
Sounds
made money
great.
in that as well.
I made way more money in that.
Wow.
So I ended up in 2015, I was I think I was rated seventh fittest man in the world in 2015. And I
Mm.
competed all around the world. I competed in France, Brazil, Dubai, all over the States, all over Canada. And I would win sometimes $30,000 at these competitions,
Amazing.
plus sponsorships and all this kind of stuff. So I had a little bit, I was a little bit more cash heavy, so I could invest in these gyms.
Hmm.
But that's when that was my full-time thing. And then when I wasn't doing that, I started getting obsessed with, okay, how can I make that number go up?
Right.
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 So I started getting a lot into that. I started studying a little bit of marketing. Marketing's different every day, it seems like now, but
Hmm.
marketing back then was a lot different than it is now.
Sure.
So I started studying a lot on marketing, sales. Obviously, sales was really, really big. Hiring, bringing in the right people, the importance of having the right people around you, diversifying your income streams, your services that you have. How can you bundle them? How can you make them more appealing? Promotions, all this kind of stuff. But anyways, I got obsessed with that on my side gig. So when I was in my ice bath or my massage, that's what I was doing. I was studying how to make that number go up. And then I ended up doing that. The number did go up. And so that was my first gym. And then I moved and I bought two other gyms, or I bought into two other gyms, and I kind of had a little bit more of a formula now.
Hmm.
So I was able to increase that number a little bit quicker.
Hmm.
And then I started getting, some strategic partnerships, understanding how important network is, your network is.
Right.
Started doing some strategic partnerships with my own sponsors, getting supplements in there, bringing in, leasing out office space for massage therapists and physios and that kind of stuff. So really trying to optimize the square footage, really, because when it's something that's very time for money, you have to optimize the square foot as much as you can. Right. So we'd build little office spaces and lease them out to like I said, physiotherapists, massage therapists, chiropractors, stuff like that.
Right.
So, and then again, just through strategic partnerships and kind of getting the formula, those two actually did very well.
Hmm.
Got rid of both of those. And then I bought another one outright this time and just applied the same. I felt like I had a formula and just applied the same thing. And I was able to make it pretty lucrative. And then I was doing this while I was competing. And the only reason I was selling the other gyms, again, I was a hobbyist. The only reason I was selling the other gyms because I was like, this is taking up a lot of time and I don't have time. I need to compete.
Right.
Right. So
Interesting.
it's whenever I sold the gyms, it always lined up with the heavier competitive time of the year. So it was never really like oh, this is what I do. This is what I'm good at sort of
Right.
thing. It was
It
just kind of
wasn't a
like,
build to scale kind of let's get
exactly.
multiple gyms, let's build a franchise. Exactly.
Yeah, I was just doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then I had a sponsor that did fitness equipment. and they brought me on to work with them and scale both their performance center and the fitness equipment side of things. And then that was from end of 2016 to 2018. And we scaled that from when I came on, they were doing like 1.8. By the time I was done, and at the end of 2018, we were doing closer to 20 at that point. So we scaled it so we scaled it pretty quickly. But
what was the secret of that success of scaling, eightfold or whatever the number is?
Yeah. So luck, I'll give a little bit of luck, but luck is nothing without taking advantage of it, right? So I had a pretty good name by this point. So the marketing at that point, my network, again, I knew the importance of network. So I always, even if I didn't know what I was going to do with my network, I was building it, right? So I was able to utilize that a lot. So because of that, we were able to get into a lot of bigger shows, whether they're conventions or bigger competitions, and then we would sign contracts to use our equipment. So we're basically leasing our equipment. So we didn't have to increase our cost of goods sold. So we were just kind of leasing. So we had a bit of a different model. So we'd lease out our equipment. So our equipment would last longer. We'd make more money per square footage of steel, basically.
Right.
And then again, I had a fairly big name in Western Canada. So I was on, I don't know, like Dick's Sporting Goods.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, you have that. So there's our equivalent would be Sport Check in Canada. So I actually got a sponsor gig with them. So I was on billboards kind of everywhere. And then, so I would kind of use that to plug. So the marketing was a lot more organic, right? So we didn't have to spend a whole bunch of money on branding and ads and that kind of stuff. We were able to kind of keep our marketing costs down, but also push. And also, so my partner, his main gig, we call it like the mothership. His main business was a logistics and transportation company. So that cut our transportation costs way down and our logistics way down because all that was already built in. So we had a lot of infrastructure. We had a lot of good foundation in place. The biggest thing was, okay, I need different teams. This is my first kind of like, okay, I need to build out different departments and I need to bring in good people. Learned the hard way there a few times. Bring in good people, and then those departments need to work well together. And they need to be like one cohesive unit, but also be kind of their own. We didn't want to be too centralized. So that was a big part of it. That was having like a really good foundation in place.
Amazing journey. And so there's a crossover, I think, and I'm sure you see it as well, between personal development and being fit mentally, physically, into entrepreneurship, being fit mentally and physically. What's the connection as you see it?
So I think there's a few there. So one I kind of alluded to before, it was the understanding that everything has to work together, right? So if somebody wants to get in better shape, it's not just about eating better. Of course, that's going to help. But if you're somebody who is not where you want to be and you want to stand on stage or you want to have a six pack or you just want to feel healthier, it starts there. But it's also how much sleep are you getting, right? What's your stress levels? Are you getting the right vitamins in? Yep. Are you getting your steps in? Are you being active enough? Right. So it's everything has to work together. Right. And it's the same thing in business. Everything has to work together cohesively. You can't have an amazing sales team, but you can't fulfill on your product or your service. Right. And if you can't, you shouldn't have an amazing product and service. You should have that. But if you have that, but you can't sell it or market it, that doesn't matter. It's useless. Right. No one can find you. So everything has to work together. Right. So that was a big understanding. That was something I kind of had a bit of an edge in. Right. And the other one is the ability to create habits. So if you're as a professional athlete, even if you're just somebody who's in really good shape, you appear to have discipline. And discipline's a tricky thing. You have to have discipline initially to create the habits. Right. And if you have a good system to create habits, it takes less discipline again. So if you're somebody who is in great shape or has been a professional athlete, you kind of have some built-in systems to have the discipline to create good habits that you need to be successful. Right. So I think that's a big edge that I think a lot of, if they so choose to use it, right, those things are useless if you don't choose to use them. But I think that's a big edge that a lot of, again, these individuals or anybody who comes from sports, and whether it's just in high school or whatever it is, but it's having that discipline and having that system to create the habits, I think is a big crossover.
I think it's immensely important. As I look back on my life, and my story was, my father passed away of a massive coronary when I was 2, and he had a massive coronary when I was born. So he was in the hospital actually recovering when I was born. And so knowing that, and then knowing at 9 that his father passed away So my dad passed away when I was 2 years old. He was 35. And then his father passed away when I was 9 years old, also of a heart attack. And so growing up with that kind of an imprint, and growing up with a family who was active physically, I always knew that that would be an important part of my life. And so we always ate well, we ate fresh, a lot of things that came from the garden, veggies and fruits that whatever my mom could grow herself in New York. And that was really always important, always being focused on exercise. And if people would say, are you training? Well, because I used to do a lot of cycling. It seemed extreme to a lot of people. And I said, I'm just staying fit for life. As a matter of fact, I was involved for several years in a relationship with a woman who wrote a book called Fit for Life. And it was like, that was a mantra for me, is staying fit for life, because it's a long haul. I'm not looking to become a triathlete and then have my hips replaced or my back replaced or my knees go out. If my knees started bothering, my hips started bothering me, I stopped running, pick up cycling. If that started bothering me, focus on yoga. If yoga wasn't working, do Pilates. I mean, so rotation was always important. Fitness is always important. And I think that type of fitness directly crosses over to entrepreneurship or to being a leader or being successful in a career.
100%.
It doesn't have to be entrepreneurship, right? It could just be being at the top of your game, being a top salesman. So
yeah, when your performance is increased, your cognitive ability is increased.
Yep.
And if you are in a leadership position, when you're fit and you have that perceived discipline, people are more likely, you're a much better influencer, right?
Yep.
And that's what a leader is just a positive influence to get an outcome, right? So it's huge. It's huge in so many different ways.
Yeah. And so I'm 65 years old today, Zach, and I don't think that I maintain the same level of physical activity that I used to, but the foundation is there, and the cardio or whatever could improve through. But the foundation is what's so important for me, at least. For others, maybe who are still trying to accelerate their game, maybe it would be important. I know Colonel Sanders didn't get really going until he was 65 years old. That's when Kentucky Fried Chicken got off the ground. But, I'm not looking to do that. But I think this is really important. And as we segue the conversation into business coaching and consulting, which is what both of us do today, it's so important to understand that business growth is also about personal growth, personal development growth, and that if we're going to grow you or your business, that we have to grow you first, and we have to grow your mindset. We have to grow your fitness, mental fitness. And so that might be really helpful to start with. Hey, you really need to get a fitness regimen and a diet regimen and a sleep regimen, and get that all in tune, because we're about to go on a growth journey in your business. It's going to require you to stretch yourself personally and professionally.
100%. And that's huge. I mean, as a business owner, you like you said, foundation, you're the foundation. That's what it is. Right. And your business is only going to climb as wide as the foundation is. So you always have to you almost have to stay ahead of that. And if you stop doing that, then that's the plateau. Right. And a lot of it's you. And I don't think a lot of business owners, they see that. They see it's the market, or it's our sales, or maybe they blame it on their people sometimes.
Right.
When if you got to take responsibility, because it all starts and ends with you. Whether it's the way you communicate, the way you influence your people, your skills that you have. Maybe you have skills in other places, but you decide to stay in this portion of your business when it's better off. Okay, I need to identify that, hire somebody else to come in. But all that is personal development, whether it's physical, mental, communication wise. It's all that. You need to always be elevating and identifying where you want to go. What skills am I lacking in? What characteristics, what behaviors do I have that I shouldn't have, or that I don't have that I should? And you should always be working on that. That's our thing. So on our summit thing, it's start with you. That's the first thing that we do, is we identify strengths and weaknesses with the actual owner themselves. And that's where it starts. So that's a beautiful point.
That's great. Okay. So I'm about to take a real radical turn in this conversation, but before I do, I just want to I want to segue with, so you're older, you're more mature, you're not a professional athlete anymore. Um, what kind of a routine or regimen do you have that you feel is still vital and vitally important for you to be able to do this other kind of work, this business consulting type work?
Mm-hmm. So I kind of made the shift to the focus to, okay, I needed my body to be in tip top shape, where now I'm just, okay, it's the same thing, but it's my brain now.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So what kind of supplements do I have to take to optimize that? Obviously, your physical health is very important, right? But that's
Right.
directly correlated with how your brain works.
Mm-hmm.
So I focus a lot on that. So it's sleep, a lot of supplements for, again, focusing on, cognitive ability, memory, all that kind of stuff. So if I'm doing exercises, that's how I motivate myself to read. I'm thinking I'm doing a cognitive exercise.
Right.
Right. So every morning I'm reading for about an hour. Right.
Good
And I
for
try
you.
not to read. I try not to jump around. I used to, like, I'm going to read 300 books a year,
Right.
but now it's okay. I'm going to read one book. I'm going to pick and choose. This is what I need right now. Like I said, this
Mm-hmm.
is what I'm lacking. Identify the book I need to read, identify the skill I need to acquire. And that's what I'm going to read. And I might read that book 2 or 3 times.
That's great.
Right. So
I see
that's
you have a
that's
book on your stand right behind you. It looks like Great by Choice by Jim
great book,
Collins.
great by choice. Jim
So
Collins, I've
that's
read.
a
I love Jim Collins.
right. No, no
He's a
pun
great.
in. That's great by choice that you have
It's
that
great. Yeah.
book. So, and
I
you
see
can
what you
read it
did there.
over and over. Yeah.
I see what you did there. So every morning, that's what I do. I want my brain to. That's what I want the first thing my brain to do.
Right.
Right. Is to open up, try to learn, try to put something new in there.
Okay.
Right. And that really helps kind of expand it. It puts my day off to a good start. And I find if I don't do that and I have to do something like this, I'm
Right.
tripping over my words much,
Right.
much more than I
Right.
maybe already am. Right.
Sure.
So it's the reading. So again, I see it as an exercise, and then I'm doing some sort of just any kind of exercise.
Yeah.
And that's where it's difficult coming from a professional athlete, because you're training to, there's a date on the calendar. Exactly. And you're trying to beat everybody who else is going to be there on that date on the calendar.
Right.
Right.
There's
So
also a
that
peak
was
level that you're trying to get to, and that you're really holding yourself against this very high standard, and you
exactly.
don't have that standard anymore, and so it drops off.
Yeah.
And then,
But it's the
yeah.
standard just shifted to something else.
Mm-hmm.
So it was tough to start, but again, I had the system to build the habit. So then it would be, I'd just go for a walk,
Right.
or go to the gym, and I don't have to be there for 2 hours killing myself. I'm just there for 30 minutes sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it's read and then go to the gym, or do just some sort of movement. Right. And then as long as I do that, I know my day is going to be fine. I know I'm accomplished. I already have an outcome that I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
All I got to do is get the next one. I have proof that I got an outcome I wanted for the day.
Right.
So there's no reason why I can't accomplish the next one.
That's great.
And then the other kind of routine is, other than everything else that's on my calendar, is just before I go to bed, I have a couple courses that I've done on cognitive awareness, talking
Mm-hmm.
to your subconscious and communication. And I just read through some of that before my head hits the pillow.
That's great.
And it's really not super complicated.
That's great. So that is a great segue to that 180-degree turn I told you I was going to take in a moment. So there's a lot of distractions in life today. Cell phones are a major distraction, because the cell phone is the modern day Swiss Army knife. The Swiss Army knife really was a cool little thing that you got when you were a young kid, and then you realize this thing doesn't really do that much. Like, it's got a lot of gadgets, but the cell phone is, to me, the modern day Swiss Army knife. It does everything. It's a computer in your hand, right? The distractions, I think, for many people are social media and all the notifications that pop up. And if you don't know how to even manage the phone, you download apps and you subscribe to things, you can start getting notified like crazy. And so we've got to train our brains to not let those impulses to be on social media, drive us to sleep and get us going in the morning when we wake up. And so I'm sure you talk about this kind of stuff, or deal with this stuff personally, or talk to your clients about this. Am I right?
Oh, 100%. And a lot of it is we're stuck in this highlight reel,
Mm-hmm.
at least the perceived highlight reel.
Right.
Right. So when especially if somebody who's new or hasn't struggled everybody's struggled in some way or form, right? The worst thing that's ever happened to you is the worst thing that's ever happened to you. I don't want to take away from anybody, but they haven't really seen or understand what it truly takes to be successful at something. At you know what I mean? Like truly be. There's like, okay, I did well, and then there's like, this is what I want. And then when we go on social media or anywhere, really, the ads that pop up everywhere, we always see is this. We don't see this,
Right.
or at least
Right.
not as much.
Right.
Right. So you get a lot of people, especially when they're first starting out, they see the glory, they see the money, they see the new cars, or they see them up on stage or whatever it is. And then that's what they think, why am I not there yet? It's been 8 months. Why am I not there yet?
Right.
Right. And that's what they're always comparing themselves to. And then they get stuck in this loop where like, okay, I have this cool thing that I want to do. Oh, I just found out that it's hard and I'm going to do something else. Right. And then they start again at a different loop. And then they're like, oh, I'm doing well. And then they're down lower. And then it keeps getting lower and lower and lower before, and they're just exhausted and they're just done. Right. Because they're so, why am I not? They don't stick with it long enough. Because all they see, they're so in tune with highlight reels. Even the ads that we get with a lot of, and this is one thing that bugs me about the industry, this might piss some people off, but that's fine, is a lot of the ads that we see, and whether it's marketing or sales or whatever it is, try this thing and you'll make 30K in your first 90 days or your first 30 days.
Yeah.
Right. Highlight reel. They're selling a highlight reel. They're not selling all the hard work that it really takes. Is work for them, maybe, and a few other people that are similar to them. Right. I'm not just discounting it. A lot of it works, but for the majority, it's not going to work 100% for everybody. So again, they're getting sold a highlight reel.
Right.
Right. And then, but they don't see that, like, okay, but then after that, you might get 30K in the first month, but if you truly want to be successful, it's going to get really hard. And you got to be able to keep going. Because eventually, if you keep going, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out. You have a breakthrough, and then you'll start going this way again. Right. But so many people quit before that part. Right. Because we're just surrounded by highlights. And that's,
I don't know if it's called a doom loop, but that's the word that keeps going in my head. It's like,
that's what I just named. I don't know. We can name it whatever we want.
Right.
We can name it whatever we want, but it is what it is. Right. It's a loop that people get stuck in, that and they're not necessarily doomed, but like they could be. They're less likely to be.
People feel like they need to keep up, and that's part of keeping up. I mean, I say people. I'll speak for myself. I too feel the need to. I have to do some checking in with social media because, I've got to post. I've got to have relevant content. We've got to, and I'll expand this conversation to AI and the importance of AI, because it's the next big wave, right? It was the internet, then it was digital, it was the internet, and now it seems like AI, and the need to understand and keep up with and even utilize it in our businesses. I was working on some marketing copy yesterday, and I was looking for better ways of saying something. So I turned to Chat GPT, and sure enough, it gave me a whole lot of ideas, way beyond just asking for a synonym on on the online dictionary. And so we have to incorporate these frameworks, but yet not get lost and overwhelmed with implementing all these new tools. I know that's something you talk about.
Yeah, no, 100%. They're just that. They're tools.
Right.
They're tools. Right. They're not something to be consumed by. Right. They're something to understand. They're something to utilize to your benefit. But some of those tools aren't going to be good for you. Right. If I'm trying to build a house, a hammer probably is a tool that I'll pick. Right. If I'm trying to build a house, a bulldozer probably isn't the tool for me. Right. But again, all we see is the highlight reels. So if you're somebody who's trying to build a house and you see a very compelling ad, probably made by some sort of AI, or at least they utilize some sort of AI, they're marketing a bulldozer. They'll tell you that they've seen success with people who bulldoze things. Right. And you're like, okay, I'll try that, because I'll try that now, because this hammer's not working. When really you also needed a saw, you also need a nail. You know what I mean? Like it's where do you use to utilize them, slowing down. Okay, what do I need? And that's where a lot of people just aren't clear. I could go down this rabbit hole now too. A lot of people just aren't clear. Entrepreneurs aren't clear on what their outcome is. A lot of them is just like, I want to make this much money,
right?
Or I want to have this big of a company, right? But they don't. What is that, right? If you want to make $10 million, what does that look like? Who do you need on your team? What do you want to sell? Who do you want to be known as? What type of person do you need to be to make $10 million?
And
And then if you
most importantly,
can,
maybe what's your why behind all that? Because, the people that you sign up to work for you or work with you, they may not care about it being a $10 million company. Like, how does that
exactly,
connect to their why?
exactly.
So,
Mhm.
coming up with a purpose that is really foundational, that's beyond money or profit, higher purpose
Mhm.
than profit, so important, I think.
Oh, 100%. I mean, we could quote Jim Collins at that point too. He says the importance of having like the vision, which
Right.
is the core values and principles, and
Hmm.
then it's your purpose, so your reason for existing outside of just making money,
Hmm.
right? And then your mission, which is the strategy. That's like now we're
Right.
getting down to like what's the outcome that we want, and then let's break it down to a bunch of little outcomes, right? But
Hmm.
it's so important to have that because if you want to unify a team, which is we'll plug the U in Summit, is you unify your team around a shared vision,
Hmm.
right? But so many people are unclear on that. It's either just make money or I want to just have a big company. I want to be able to sell it and have a high valuation and live on a beach, which is great.
Right.
And I
What's
think
the
that
U
people
in Summit? You said that. I don't think people understood that reference. Can you explain?
so the acronym so the summit so the S's start with you and then the U is unify your team around a shared vision.
Got it.
So it's what is that vision?
Got
Right?
it.
Because and you said it perfectly. Not everybody like how many sales reps, how many cold callers, how many customer service reps really care if the company makes $500 million?
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
don't think they really care, but they could get behind wanting to change the lives of the people in our community. They can get behind, you know, creating generational wealth for XYZ community, whatever it is, right? You
Right.
think of all these great things you can. They can get behind that. And when you're at your, if you do like an annual big team get together or conference or anything like that, and you're rallying behind that,
Hmm.
you're going to have a lot more of that room. I'm not saying everybody, right? But you're going to have a lot more of that room bought in, especially on your leadership team, especially on your inner circle,
Yeah.
right? You're going to have much more buy-in. You're going to have they'll be much more willing when you ask them, hey, I need you to work on a Saturday and a Sunday. They're much more likely to be like, yes, because they have a compelling reason to do so. They have a compelling purpose to do so.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, Zach, take us home. Tell us about Summit Chasers Network. What is
Yeah.
that? What's your business all about? Tell us a little bit
Yeah.
about that.
No, I love it. So our purpose. So I like we explained in the podcast, I have kind of an unconventional upbringing.
Hmm.
Barely graduate. Actually, I didn't graduate high school. Went and got my GED afterwards.
Hmm.
Um, so I had a fairly unconventional upbringing, and through after I was done competing, I started I was a co-founder in a consulting company, and we worked with again. We just took a lot of the stuff from fitness into working with companies, and our first ever client was a bail bonds company,
Right.
not much to do with fitness. And the tactics that we use, the accountability, the holding people, how do you communicate, the habits, creating habits, the
Hmm.
coaching and developing people, it translated very well. So we got a lot of traction with that. And then my kind of purpose, I guess, was I want people who have my type of upbringing to have a chance at success because a lot of times it's not that they don't have the skills or the experience, the capabilities, it's in here, right? They put shackles on themselves. They're like, oh, I didn't graduate high school, or oh, I only worked in construction, or
Right.
I was an athlete, I'm not supposed to be successful in this. And then immediately your subconscious is like, oh, we're not supposed to do good at this, so let's not. Right? So they put shackles on themselves right away. But they have so much capability, and so many people that I've worked with just doing podcasts, um, did consulted with myself or coached myself, they have some of the greatest ideas. So many innovations have come from small businesses because they have the ability, they can be more fluid to compete, and they need to compete with the bigger companies. So there's so many cool innovations that come out. So really with Summit Chasers, our focus is to allow we want the expectancy of the success of small businesses to be expected, not like by chance. We want it to be
Understood.
something that these guys can come in and innovate and create a great future with values, um, and really create a future, really create a better future for these people. Because again, there's so many great people,
Yeah.
so many great, hard nosed, blue collar, and even if they're not blue collar, whatever, they just worked really hard. They just don't feel like they're supposed to succeed, and
Well, I
that's
think
really kind of the purpose. So
so many of us coaches have that imagery on our website. I know I have it on the homepage of my website, that it's a 20-mile march, to quote from Jim
20
Collins,
miles, yeah, there
and
you go.
that there's a summit. And there's a lot of other coaching companies that use Apex and Peak and Summit. And so I get it. That's the connection, folks. If people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way to reach you? Is it at summitchasersnetwork.com?
SummitChasersNetwork.com or scngetstarted.com. Zach Carlin on LinkedIn, Summit Chasers on pretty much everything else, social media wise, Summit Chasers. So yeah, you can find us there.
Sounds good. Thanks for being on the show today. Yeah. Folks, you know the drill. If you enjoyed this show, please share it with others and please give us a great rating on your podcast listening application of choice, and stay tuned for future episodes of the Disruptive Successor Show.
This podcast is sponsored by myself, Jonathan Goldhill, and my company, the Goldhill Group, where we provide coaching for growing companies. I'm Jonathan Goldhill, and my purpose is simple: to guide entrepreneurial leaders in family businesses towards more freedom and fulfillment. I want entrepreneurs to get clarity around the changes that will make them and their businesses more successful so they can experience the same freedom I've enjoyed in my life. Our proven practices challenge business owners to think differently about their business and how they're running it, and quite literally become game changers in our clients' companies. Learn more at thegoldhillgroup.com website, where you can schedule your free strategy session. Thank you for joining us on the Disruptive Successor podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, review, and share with a friend who would benefit from the message. If you're interested in picking up a copy of my book, Disruptive Successor, go to disruptivesuccessor.com.